Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here as we conclude our nature webinar series. So my name is Lauren Seville. I am the Roots and Shoots Manager at the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada, and I'm super happy to be with you all this evening on our Facebook and YouTubes, so we can chat and share some information about nature walks. So our presenter today is Chloe Chang. She is part of our Youth Advisory Council, and she is super passionate about nature, getting out in nature, and she really wanted to share that passion with our JGI family. So she put together a lovely presentation about how to do a nature walk for the environment, for yourself, for science, and all the ways in which to go about doing this. So thank you for joining us here today. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comment box, and we're happy to answer those at the end of the presentation, and we will get started. So welcome, Chloe.
Hello. Hi, Lauren, and hi, everybody.
Thank you for joining us here today. We're super excited to hear about how to do a nature walk and all that's involved with it. So I will let you go ahead and start your presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, hi, everybody. I'm Chloe Chang, and I'm a Youth Advisory Council member for the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. And I'm hosting this webinar with you lovely folks today because nature walks are absolutely near and dear to my heart. So, I'd like to point out right away that all of these photos are taken by me, except for the ones that say otherwise. And all of them are fantastic ways to get involved with nature walks. So I'm video calling from Guelph, Ontario, or Treaty C territory, the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I find it especially important to include a land acknowledgement in the context of nature and ecology because this land has been stewarded and cared for by Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. And really only now are we starting to look at all of the Indigenous wisdom and knowledge about the flora and fauna that lives in North America and looking at it through a scientific lens and really finding the convergence of those two paths. So it's a really, really beautiful time right now. So I have always been curious about nature, animals, and the environment, and I always have tried to get involved, especially with things related to nature. For example, I worked and volunteered extensively at a wildlife rehab center, and I would say that's where I really developed my passion for wildlife. So, in case you aren't aware, wildlife rehab centers are places where the public can bring in orphaned or injured wildlife, anything that's been affected by human activity, really. And workers will try to care for the animals to send them back out into the wild. So, we are not a sanctuary. We do not keep animals forever. The aim is to rehabilitate them or send them to somewhere else. And so these are some of the experiences that I've had. You can see a great horned owl on the left, a yearling white-tailed deer. So these ones were born in the spring, and we take them in for the summer and bottle feed them until they're a year old. And then on the right is a fledgling mute swan. Fledgling means baby in the world of birds. So I also am an avid bird watcher, or birder as I like to call it. Essentially, that's just me walking around with my bins or binoculars and a camera, listening and looking for as many birds as I can find on nature walks. So these are some different photos of experiences I've had, and you can see on the left side that I'm actually holding a red-winged blackbird. Now, I'm not Snow White. What that was from bird banding, where for scientific research, you have these nets or various methods of capturing birds. You give them a cute little aluminum anklet that has a number on them, and that can track their movements. So if various people are catching, let's say, this red-winged blackbird, then you can track when it was in Mexico, per se, all the way up to here if it's caught again and again. And so there are birds that get banded for years, and people keep an eye on these individuals. So it's really amazing and important data that's being collected through bird banding. And this is at the Pelee Island Bird Observatory. Because I love nature so much, I decided to study wildlife biology and conservation at the University of Guelph. And I actually also have a minor in agriculture. I come from a town in Ontario where farming is really prevalent. And so my current goal for my career is to see how we can improve environmental impacts from agriculture. Here are some photos from my job working with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture this past summer. And finally, I also joined the super duper amazing Jane Goodall Institute of Canada's Youth Advisory Council. So, as a council member, they're really looking for youth inputs on how the institute is run and the direction of it. All of the individuals on the council, the last cohort was about 12 of us from across Canada, are all interested in various facets of the three pillars that Jane Goodall tries to conquer, which is environmental inequity, climate change, and biodiversity loss. This photo here is a photo from the final forum of the Uncovering Common Grounds section of the Jane Goodall Institute. So various projects were summarized and presented to everybody, and it was so inspiring and absolutely wonderful. Now, to get into the material, what exactly is a nature walk? So essentially, it's you, with or without other people, maybe with a pet, whomever, just enjoying the nature around you. So it can be in any safe environment. Maybe it's a city street with some pigeons and maybe a little more than that. Or a public park, or if you're fortunate enough, things like a national park, trails, whatever. Um, Nature walk also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be walking either. So biking, rollerblading, or skating, canoeing, even maybe not moving at all, as long as you're enjoying the nature around you, then I personally consider that to be a nature walk. Because of that, I love how accessible they are. As long as you have a safe environment around you in which to be yourself, then you can enjoy nature. Here are some different photos of where I've gone on nature walks, and I really want to point out the top right and left photos. So in the top right, you can see that there's a little bird on some wires. That was actually a vineyard on Pelee Island, and I was biking past it, and I heard this bird. It's called a chipping sparrow. Now, you really don't expect too many species or much wildlife in a monoculture field where there's nothing but grapes and maybe some grass growing. But even at the orchard I was working at today, I could hear so many different species of birds. And I actually had at an organic farm this deer just run right past me, a white-tailed deer. It's really beautiful to see that you can find nature anywhere, even where it's kind of trying to be pushed out a bit. And the top left photo is downtown Chicago. Now they have a waterfront and there was some green landscaping there. So from that walk, I actually took this photo. And this is a northern parula. So it's a type of insect-eating bird or a warbler that migrates from the south to a little bit more north from where I am in Guelph. And so it's not a bird you see too often, but even in a city the size of Toronto, in the downtown, I found this bird. You really never know what you can find, and no matter where you are, there are spaces for you to enjoy nature. Now, how to do it for you. I know a lot of people my age, as students, are always out of 100. They're always stressed and busy. And what I really love about my university is that we have several woodlots and forests in which you can just take a deep breath. Nature walks should be minimally stressful. It's a place where you can feel your body relax in the environment and just breathe in beautiful, crisp air. Mindfulness exercises in particular are a great way to become in tune with your environment. And my personal favorite is 5-4-3-2-1, which involves embracing the environment with all five senses. And for those who don't know how to do it, I figured I would do one right now. So, Everyone take a deep breath with me. And first, I want you to pick out 5 things, just in your head, list them off, things that you can see. So they can be absolutely anything. For example, I'm looking at my slideshow. I have my keyboard in front of me. I can see my webcam. Uh, I'd like to look outside. However, I'm in a bedroom, so I can't really see too much. Then you're going to try to pick out 4 things that you can feel. If you were outside, you could feel maybe the breeze or the clothing that you're wearing. For me, it's often that I took a shower and my hair is still a little bit wet. And that's 4 things. So after that is listing 3 things that you can hear. You could hear your heartbeat or your breath. Maybe there's some sort of breeze, or um, I'm always a fan of listening for birds, but it could be anything from trees rustling to maybe some people chatting nearby. And okay, the next ones are going to get hard. Try to sniff out 2 different smells in your environment. So this is why I love doing it outside, where you can smell flowers or the smell of like wet soil or things like that. And then lastly, you want to try to find one thing that you can taste. So maybe it's the leftover minty taste of toothpaste from brushing your teeth, or the coffee that you had an hour ago, but you just list those things down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it really helps to ground your body into the environment that you are in. So, finally, when it comes to nature walks, there is scientific evidence that shows that being in naturalized spaces can have health benefits and it can make you feel better. I didn't want to get into the details of it too much because we would be having a conversation for a very long time, and I didn't need to bore you down with all the nitty-gritty details. But feel free to look it up. It is very interesting. Now, when it comes to safety with nature, as much as people are aware of things, I do find that sometimes there are some things that you're not aware of. And so I wanted to go over just the baseline of how to perform a nature walk safely, or being in nature safely. So, my biggest piece of advice is always to stay on trails. It's one of the best ways to avoid getting lost, getting into any sort of trouble with plants or animals that you really don't want to be around, and avoiding just bad situations in general. Um, if you're going into an area you're unfamiliar with, I would recommend bringing a buddy. Not only that, but having other people around you can really help you to see more of what is around you. For example, with my wildlife club at the university, we go on these nature walks as a group. And it is the most amazing thing because everyone's a specialty in a little something. So I love birds, but there are people even better than me going by the different sounds. And then someone is always crouched down by the floor looking at mushrooms. And then we have people who are interested in insects or plants or salamanders. And so they're flipping logs. And all of that can happen if you're bringing other people with you. I find that you can always learn something new. Also, please protect your body. Stay hydrated with water if it's a longer walk. Using sunscreen and bug spray if you need to. For example, this photo here is a tick, I'm sure as you're all familiar with. And this one was one that I found on a friend after visiting just a regular public park it didn't have any super long grass. This is a dog tick, and so you never really know, especially between the months of May to July, late spring and early summer. You should be checking your body for ticks after walking, and you can try to avoid walking through long grass, wearing pants and long socks, and bug sprays claim that they help, although I'm not sure about the efficacy of those. You should be wearing them regardless in the summer, though, because of mosquitoes. Or, again, covering yourself up with loose clothing and things like that. So, if you're around water, just be water safe. I am a certified lifeguard, and so I've had to deal with a couple incidences. And something that I notice is a lot of people in the summer think, oh, well, I can't really get hypothermia because, it's summer. If water is cold, then it will really cool your core temperature down and you can still get hypothermia. So if you're feeling cold, just hop out of the water. And also, if you're in a boat or things like that, have flotation devices with you. As well, be careful when touching nature. So there are things called zoonotic diseases, which means that it's a pathogen or a sickness that can be spread between different species. A really common example of this is rabies. When you think about it, a bunch of different mammals can have it, from dogs to raccoons to skunks, and then humans can contract it from things like bites or scratches. That exists for a wide variety of species. I can think of the avian influenza right now is spreading around, and it can be contracted in humans. It has been in very few cases when people are working with live birds, but so any dead birds or poultry or meats are safe, but that is something that's happening in our world right now. There are also many plants that can cause skin irritation, like poison ivy or giant hogweed. And we all kind of know about poison ivy, but I thought I'd talk about giant hogweed, which is pictured here, because it is really funky as a plant. So it has these toxins in its sap that cause skin inflammation and these almost sort of burns when the affected skin is exposed to sunlight. So one of the ways, if you brush up against these plants, for example, you're usually advised to cover up where you were exposed and then wash it off as soon as possible, and try not to expose that to any sort of UV, because that's what causes the inflammation. And fun fact, from what I've heard, these gigantic plants were actually introduced to North America as an ornamental. I don't know what person in their right mind thought, oh, I'm just going to bring a giant, irritating, noxious plant to North America and put it in my front yard. But you can thank them for these lovely weeds. So, how to do it for nature. This lovely little bird to the right is a prothonotary warbler, and it's a type of insect-eating bird that's endangered in Canada, uh, mainly due to habitat loss. It likes to nest and raise its young in flooded forest habitat, and many of those are disappearing around Canada. I really wanted to talk about how to do it for science and for nature, because nature walks really affect these topics, and you can conserve birds like these and other endangered species by showing that you care about naturalized spaces, by taking advantage of areas in which you can do nature walks, by contacting policymakers and people that make those big decisions and telling them that you care. So, um, this is just kind of how to be the kindest to nature that you can possibly be, but remember to leave things the way that you found them. Whether you're flipping logs and you're putting them back as nicely as you can, or not picking flowers or leaves off of things, those all count as ways to just maintain natural beauty. I have to say, staying on trails again, because not only can it be dangerous, but it can also hurt the delicate plants and disrupt animals and their nests, especially in the springtime. So I would advise, if you're going to walk off trail in the winter, it's certainly not nearly as bad as in the spring. Um, for example, this photo on the right was taken in, I believe, late April. It is of a crocus, so it's that pretty flower over there, and they bloom very, very early, usually when there's still snow on the ground. But they're an ephemeral springtime plant, which means that by the summer, they're all completely dead and gone. But they're extraordinarily delicate. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's also a garter snake in that photo snaking along the bottom. Now, you're walking. You may not be paying attention. You really don't want to disrupt all the other plants and animals that are just trying to live their lives. and you can do that by staying on the trails. Be aware of invasive species. Garlic mustard, for example, is a very common and aggressive invasive species here in North America. Its seeds are spread very easily by both humans and animals, and so it's commonly found along high traffic areas, usually forest edges, where it thrives and competes with native plants. You can do your best to avoid spreading pests like invasive species and insects where they don't belong by staying on trails to reduce the spread to things like forest centers and cores, and cleaning your shoes or boots when they get dirty. If you're traveling between different counties or far away, I would highly recommend that you clean your hiking boots or your shoes before traveling there, because there are all sorts of pathogens and things and seeds that can stick in the soil on your boots, and that is how a lot of things end up getting spread. Now, as a wildlife rehabber, I get this question all the time. What do you do if you find an injured or orphaned animal? Generally, just leave it alone. Try not to touch it or move it unless it's in immediate danger, and always your safety comes first. So if it's a situation that feels unsafe or you don't feel comfortable, then you need to prioritize yourself first. I recommend that you contact your local wildlife rehabilitation center or humane society if you are having issues. And so for me, one that I would contact here in Guelph would be either the Guelph Humane Society, that has answered my calls a couple of times, or the Toronto Wildlife Center. And usually, even if they don't get back to your calls, they will as soon as possible. Another thing is, please do not feed wild animals. Not only can they become more aggressive towards humans and put both themselves and you in danger, but it can also make them sick and do more harm than good. For example, ducks and geese that are fed human foods like bread can develop something called angel wings, because those simple carbs are not meant to be a part of their diet. In adults, this disease is incurable and does prevent them from flying. So you see this photo on the left is of a Canada goose, an adult that has angel wings. So they end up being splayed out like that due to malnutrition. And in rehab, we see tons of birds like this. They become no longer able to fly. They remain grounded at whatever pond that they're at. And this is completely preventable if humans don't intervene with nature. Um, you can see tons of signs now that say don't feed wildlife, and I always recommend heeding them. And just to the right is a photo of some possums from my rehab center, and they were very cute, so I thought I'd share that. Also, animals can become stressed from human contact too. For example, in the birding community, there are some regulations, or not regulations, but unwritten rules when it comes to birding with owls. They are extremely sensitive to stress. So if you ever find one, you always keep your distance, you don't use flash, you don't stick around for too long, and you really don't pester it. Like, you wouldn't chase after it and things like that. And also many amphibians, so salamanders and frogs and toads, they can breathe with their skin. And so if you ever find one, um, or they can directly absorb any chemicals that are on your hands into their body, which can be toxic for them. So I would recommend, just again, not touching wildlife. Um, Here are some species that you can protect by being good to the environment. These are all endangered in Canada. So the top left photo is of a young blue racer. This is a species of snake that's endemic to Pelee Island within Canada. And as an adult, they are relatively large. I want to say about 2 feet. And they are in fact blue. They lose all that brown spotting on them. The top right photo, there's a turtle, a larger turtle, and that is the Blandings turtle, which is threatened in Canada, and it's just so cute because it's got that lovely little yellow throat. The bottom left photo shows the red-headed woodpecker, another species that is endangered, and the bottom right is the American white pelican. And I actually took those photos in the Great Lakes, so a lot of people don't know this, but pelicans do hang out in the Great Lakes, especially during the summertime. Now, how to do it for science. In order to talk about this topic in the best way, I thought I'd bring in my friend Krista. She is a naturalist intern at the University of Guelph's Arboretum, hosting plenty of workshops and working with the public about nature. She is a University of Guelph zoology major, a wildlife rehabber, someone who taught me to forage, and a great friend. Now, I have a video that I'd like to share from her.
Hello, everybody. My name is Krista Wise, and I am a naturalist intern here at the University of Guelph Arboretum. Now, some of you guys may not be familiar with what an arboretum is. I like to think of an arboretum as a tree museum, or maybe like a tree zoo. So maybe like you would go to a museum to look at paintings, or a zoo to look at animals. You can come to an arboretum to learn about trees and plants, which I think is pretty neat. So I'm working here for the summer, and it's given me a really cool opportunity to learn about nature walks. And I know you guys have been talking a lot about nature walks, and so I wanted to share what I like to do when I'm out on a walk. So myself, I go to the University of Guelph, so I'm very science minded. I like to put on my detective cap when I go out for walks, and I like to look around and figure out maybe what sort of plants I'm seeing, what sort of trees I'm seeing, what animals, maybe a bird or an insect, something like that. A fungi, I love fungi, so that's something that I always like to keep my eyes out, or my eyes peeled for. Um, but what if I wanted to, because I love science, and maybe I want to contribute to science and really help scientists with their projects. Well, something really great that we can do is that we can use different community science projects. So community science is basically when anybody can become sort of like a little scientist on their own. We can go out and collect data, collect information, and then we can submit it and put it into maybe a website or an app on your phone. And then that will help us, and that will help larger groups of scientists to be able to look at the information that we have gathered just on our everyday walks, which I think is pretty cool. And they can look at patterns and things. So now you might be wondering, how do we actually do that? How do we actually go about maybe contributing to community science? Well, luckily, it's actually really easy. So we can use apps on our phones. So personally, my favorite apps, I use iNaturalist and Seek. So both of these apps are by the same company. And what they do is they aim to help you use your camera on your phone to be able to determine maybe what you're looking at. So for example, if I am out walking and I see a tree that I want to identify, I don't know what it is, maybe I want to figure it out. So what I do is I go up to it and I'll take a picture. Maybe I'll take a picture of its leaves, I'll take a picture of the bark, I'll take a big background picture of like the whole tree. And then what I do is I upload those pictures to iNaturalist. And you can do this on your phone when you're out in the field, when you're out for your walk, or you can go home and upload the photos to your computer and do it on the computer there. So once you've got those pictures, you load them into the app or load them into the website, and then it uses a really strong AI or like a computer that tries to figure out what you're looking at. And I know I've always been very surprised at how amazing it is at figuring out just what you're looking at. So that's something that I would highly, highly recommend. And what happens with like apps like iNaturalist is you upload those photos, it'll suggest, oh, I think you're looking at a sugar maple. And then you compare pictures and you can say, yes, I'm pretty confident that this is definitely a sugar maple. And then you submit it. And then what you do, or what iNaturalist will do, is it creates a whole, it posts it to the world, basically, of your area. And experts in your field, maybe there's an arborist, somebody who's a tree expert in your area, and they will look at your picture and they go, yep, that's absolutely a sugar maple, I agree. And they'll confirm it, they'll say, yep, sugar maple. And then maybe there's somebody else who also, maybe they really like trees and they're looking through the picture and like, yeah, that's definitely a sugar maple as well. So now you've got 3 different people that have now confirmed that, yes, this is indeed a sugar maple that I'm looking at. And then the beautiful thing is this now becomes research grade. So an iNaturalist, research grade just means that enough people have confirmed that that the identification is correct, that what everybody is saying is true. Because if you get 3 people that are all saying, yep, this is a sugar maple, then iNaturalist knows, okay, this is almost certainly a sugar maple. The chances are very good that this is what it is. And then what they do is, now that that is research grade, now researchers who maybe somebody really wants to study sugar maples, or an excellent example would be like ash trees, because ash trees right now are going through, are dying off because of something called an emerald ash borer. So it's a little beetle that's an invasive species, sadly, that has been introduced, and it will, and it does kill trees. So ash trees are something that maybe we want to keep an eye on. Maybe myself as a researcher, I want to know where in Ontario are there ash trees that are still alive, that are still big, that haven't been affected by the beetles yet, that haven't been killed by the emerald ash borer. So what I could do as a researcher is I can open up iNaturalist and I can search for ash tree, and it will pop up every sighting of an ash tree with pictures that people have uploaded in all of Ontario. Or you can even go all of North America, all of the world. So there's so much room, so many uses for these types of programs. So iNaturalist is my favorite personally. It's a companion app called Seek, which basically how you use that is if you go up to a plant or an animal or a fungi and you point your camera at it, it will like sort of automatically try to guess what you're looking at. And it does a pretty good job with that as well. So if you want more of like an instantaneous, what am I looking at? You can use Seek. I still prefer iNaturalist. I think I really love the idea of contributing to community science and really putting on my science hat and helping out with that. Another app that I really like to use is called Squirrel Life. So Squirrel Life is an app that's really great for if you want to go on maybe more casual walks. Maybe you're going on a walk with your family and you don't really want to stop and maybe take lots of pictures of what you're looking at. And that's fine, I understand. Maybe you want a more casual nature walk. Those are great too. So something that I really like to do, even if I'm just, even on my way into work when I'm walking, or maybe when you're walking to school, something that you can do is you can use the Squirrel Life app. And what that allows you to do is, or I guess what you do for that to contribute to community science, is you go for a walk and you open the app, you say, start a walk. You start a walk, and then as you're going along, if you see a squirrel, then you'll note down and say, I saw a gray squirrel, an eastern gray squirrel. And they've got pictures of them on there, so it makes it really, really super easy for you to be able to figure out what you're looking at. And you can say, I saw a gray squirrel and it was chasing another squirrel. And then, so that's an option. You can go in and you can select, oh, it was chasing another squirrel. Or maybe it was climbing a tree, burying like a nut or something. And these are all things that you can write down and then you can note in the Squirrel Life app as you walk. And it's very easy, very straightforward. And you just see a squirrel and you note it down. So I saw a red squirrel. It was chirping really loud. It was really angry. It was in a tree somewhere. It wasn't happy I was nearby. You can write that down. And then what happens is that you end your walk, and this app is used by University of Guelph researchers and other researchers to sort of figure out, okay, well, what are the squirrels in these areas doing? They can then compare if they have data from city squirrels versus squirrels out in more rural areas, like near farmland. Maybe they're behaving a little bit differently. Maybe there are more squirrels inside cities, or maybe less squirrels inside cities. Who knows? And that's where citizen science is amazing, because citizen science is great because scientists can't be everywhere all at once. But we can. There's so many of us that can go around just on our everyday walks and explore nature, maybe take some pictures, upload them to a website. Maybe we open up an app during our walk and we mark down what sort of different things we saw, whether that's squirrels or birds. But all of these things are things that we can do to contribute to community science and really help scientists out. And I think that's pretty great. So the next time that you are out maybe going for a nature walk, maybe think about how you could contribute to community science and really help scientists and gather data and be a scientist in your own right. And I think that's pretty cool.
So, citizen science or community science gets me so excited because not only have I contributed to it a lot, especially with birds, but I have seen its effects. So, working with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, one of the things that we cover is looking at invasive species of pests and monitoring them, seeing that they don't spread to like other provinces or other countries, especially with trading with the states. And there was a certain incident with a type of bug called the European cherry fruit fly that was found in Toronto by an individual, and it was reported on iNaturalist. Now, that had become research grade data, and Agri-Food Canada, the federal level of agriculture, became aware of this and actually had to send people to this site in Toronto to scout out for the European cherry fruit fly because it had been found by just a regular person who was going on a nature walk and decided to take a picture of a fly and ID it. I can't see a more perfect example than that. But when it comes to me contributing to citizen science, what I love to do is record my bird sightings on eBird. So that works with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And what I'm doing is I just write down whatever birds I see, the number of them. It tracks my location and it tracks my walk, the distance. I write down the number of people I saw, or sorry, the people I was walking with, and not only does that contribute to maps of where birds are, both temporally and spatially, but I can also get a life list of all the different species that I've seen on my walks. So it's both beneficial to you and to scientists. Okay, let's see if I can get to the next slide. Okay, 1 second. Here we are. In conclusion, nature walks are something that can be done from anywhere, and they can benefit anyone and everyone. This time of year, a lot of Canada is experiencing some of its most beautiful weather, at least in my opinion. And so I strongly encourage all of you to go and enjoy it before it's gone. Final notes are to be safe, protect yourself and protect others. Stay on trails, not only for you, but for the nature. When you're out and about, just look around because nature is truly everywhere. If you're feeling stressed, then maybe try taking a walk. And you can contribute to citizen science so easily with just your cell phone. Now, if you really like nature, like if you're like, Chloe, I knew all that and that was great, but kind of looking for a little bit more here, then I have a whole list of hobbies that I wish I'd known about, I guess when I was younger, that really encourage nature. So gardening, especially with native plants and bringing the wildlife to you. Birding, and so bird watching, herping, which is looking at different types of reptiles and amphibians and finding them in the wild, mushroom and plant ID, insect ID, butterfly ID, and mothing. Those are all things that people do, and it's really, really fascinating. I highly recommend taking out that app that Krista mentioned, Seek, and using that to really start, or find someone who knows a little bit more than you and drag them out on walks. Bring a camera out with you, record what you see, post it on iNaturalist, because even if you don't know what it is or the AI doesn't know, other people will come in and check out the website regularly and try to look and figure it out for you. I also love bringing out my art supplies and just doing artistic renditions of what I see. Volunteering at different conservation authorities, wildlife rehab centers, if you are able to do so, has led to some of the most incredible experiences of my life. And it really led to a passion and work ethic as a young adult. Um, Things like bushcraft and foraging are definitely increasing in prevalence, especially on social media. So follow different TikTokers that show how to do all sorts of foraging and living with the wild. I really admire people that can take garlic mustard, that invasive species that I mentioned earlier, and make things like a garlic mustard pesto. And finally, if you are really interested in it, pursuing a career that can reduce human impact on the environment or one that incorporates field work is definitely the direction I'm taking, and I'm so happy about it. And here's just a quick video of one of the YAC members, Hannah, and we went on a nature walk together this winter. What she said there was white pine. What she was doing was taking the needles from the tree and counting them, looking at how they're clustered and the shape of them to identify the tree. And then to the left, I was using a small hand lens to just take a photo with my cell phone of a little spider. If you want to screenshot this, then here is a list of all the resources that were kind of mentioned earlier, as well as Jane Goodall's social medias, as well as my personal ones. If you would like to reach out and ask me further about anything at all, feel free to. And the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada has so many incredible opportunities and ways to encourage people to love nature. So I would always recommend giving them a follow on all of their social media platforms. And finally, because I'm a scientist, here's just a list of the references.
Thank you so much, Chloe. That was amazing, so informative, so many interesting ideas and ways to get involved with nature, how to do it properly, how to be safe for yourself and for the environment. So thank you so much for that lovely talk. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the comments. But I know I have a question I wanted to ask. If you could go anywhere in the world and do a nature walk, where would that be?
Oh gosh. Okay. If it were for birds, I would have to pick Central or Latin America just because of the astounding biodiversity that can be found there. If I was trying to really look at mammals, which are way easier to photograph, I might add, I would definitely do something like Africa or look at all the different marsupials of like all the oceanic islands and things like that.
That's amazing. I have to say I've been very lucky to go to Africa many times, and
So cool.
it definitely was the most amazing experience. I was lucky enough to do field work similar to Jane herself with monkeys instead of apes, but got to study baboons and vervet monkeys and walking amongst them in the savannah, seeing giraffes and buffalo and other primate species was just the best experience, and I miss it every day, especially with COVID not being able to travel. It's been tough to not get out there. So
Oh, absolutely.
I definitely hope that you and anyone else who wants to go and discover nature gets to do it wherever they want to now. So thank you so much, Chloe. Really appreciate your time with us here. And it doesn't look like we have any questions from our audience, but if anyone wants to shoot us an email, you can connect with us on Jane Goodall Canada. You can also find more information about our Roots and Shoots program, about our Youth Advisory Council program on our website. If anyone of you have any youth that want to get involved with Roots and Shoots, please check out the website and you can sign up there. If you are over 18, you can sign up yourself. And if you are younger, you can have an adult sign up for you to get all the information. So thank you again, Chloe. That was lovely to hear about your nature walk experience and all of your knowledge. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your summers.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye.